This program offers a unique opportunity not only to learn from each other, but also find solutions that are common to the cities.
I probably didn't think that earlier, but now I do. After being a part of this cohort, I've been thinking so much about how cities help us solve some of the biggest problems, right? Like we look at these big cities together and they have similar issues, similar challenges.
The problems that cities face sometimes are the same, and the solutions that we can learn from each other might be useful. Maybe it's not exactly the same solution, but I think that when cities talk among each other, we can find solutions together.
In times where diplomacy at the national level and international cooperation is going through so many challenges, I think that cities and cooperation between local actors will become more and more important.
The entire issue about finding the right tools, and in this case digital tools, to encourage citizen participation. So having citizens participation that is not passive, but citizen participation that is integrated into the entire schematics of decision making.
Good afternoon to everybody. Good morning, good evening to all of you who joined us in today's conference on the state of social cohesion, social justice and social participation in Berlin, Mexico City, Nairobi and New Delhi. I'm Stormy Mildner. I'm the director of the Aspen Institute here in Berlin, and it's a great pleasure welcoming you all to our conference today. And I have to say, it fills my heart with joy, starting out with a video from our project, which summarized what we have done over the last 8 to 10 months, and also seeing all our participants in the project. And you are going to meet many more of them throughout the day we are spending here, or half the day we are spending here together in the conference. This conference, or the whole project as a whole, wouldn't have been possible, I mean, first of all, without our Aspen team here. And you have met Clara before, who is our chief project manager for the project, but also not without our international partners, the Aspen Institutes in India, Mexico, and Kenya. And you are going to meet these institutes in a second. As you know, Aspen is a big family, and it's a growing family, with the Aspen Institute, the original in the United States, but then also 12 international Aspen Institutes around the world, which are independent legally, financially, but we all share the same ambition and the same mission, contributing to better societies, future-oriented, sustainable, and fair societies. And we do that all in different programmings with different focal areas. But we all also focus on values-based leadership. And as I said, we want to make a contribution to future-oriented and better societies. The project also would not have been possible without the Stiftung Deutsche Klassenlotterie Berlin. This is a foundation which has supported our work in different programs and different projects in the past, with a very strong focus on cities. And we are ever so grateful that this allowed us to pursue a 2-year cities project, bringing together representatives from those 3 countries and 3 important cities for mutual learning, trust building, bridge building, focusing on different topical areas which are of pivotal importance to the future of cities. I don't have to tell you, our audience, our speakers, our participants, how important cities are for economic growth, but also for social cohesion. For the future, for the today of our societies and the future of our societies. And the importance of cities is growing. More and more people are going to live in cities. And while cities can be a wonderful hub for innovation and the development of ideas, there are also a ton of problems cities are facing. Energy, and access to energy and fair energy and prices, but also open spaces. The polarization in cities is going to be an increasing problem. Poverty, fairness, I mean, you name it. There are so many issues cities are struggling, infrastructure, and it's not always easy to tackle them, especially under the circumstances we are currently living in, where budgets are also tight. And so it's ever more important to learn from each other and to implement also new ideas. So Aspen is all about not just talking about the problems and bringing together people with different perspectives, but also developing new ideas. And this is what our project also did. Our project participants put together a catalog of recommendations for cities to implement. And we are going to share also a link to this publication in the chat function in a second. It's a great compendium, I would say, developed on a consensual basis with national and city specific recommendations, and also recommendations for intercity, intercontinental, international cooperation. Because what we also know in our changing geopolitical environment, where cooperation does not come so natural anymore, and also trust isn't a given anymore. We have to work more closely with each other, and cities are extremely important diplomatic actors. So this is what our meeting is all about today. We want to talk about social cohesion, social justice, social participation in our cities. We want to focus on the problems, and we want to also identify the potentials and chances. And we also want to talk about solutions and also about the lessons learned also in our project. And with this, it's also a great joy to bring in our cooperation partners, the Aspen Institutes in Mexico, the Aspen Initiative in Africa, which is in Nairobi, and also the Aspen Institute in India. All three of them, you do fantastic programming, and I'm so happy that you are here with us today. Clara Maybe, our participant, our partner from Mexico, that we can also see him. Miguel, we need to turn on your camera. There he is. Fantastic. So Miguel, apart from Aspen, Colombia, which is a very new institute, you are the first, North American, Latin American institute, and it's fantastic that you are here with us today. Miguel, can I hand over to you for some opening remarks?
Thank you very much, Anika, and good morning, everyone. I am Miguel Limon, Programs Director at Aspen Institute Mexico. It is a pleasure to be with you here in this webinar on the future cities and the importance of global-local dialogue. We are very proud to co-organize with other Aspens this conversation and to bring together such a distinguished group of speakers and participants. At Aspen Institute Worldwide, we strongly believe in the value of creating spaces for interdisciplinary dialogue that connects ideas, sectors, and regions in order to address the major challenges of our time. Today, more than half of the world's population lives in urban areas, and this number will continue to grow significantly in the coming decades. This makes it essential to reflect on how we want to design, govern, and inhabit our cities in the future. And this is what the Aspen International Partners can do. A conversation that today is especially relevant because issues such as migration, climate change, infrastructure, social cohesion, and urban innovation can no longer be understood solely from a local or national perspective. They require international cooperation, cross-sector collaboration, and exchange of experiences and best practices. We are therefore delighted to convene experts and participants from different backgrounds to explore how global partnerships can help build more resilient, inclusive, and sustainable communities. Thank you all for joining us today. Thanks to Aspen Germany, especially for leading this effort, and thank you to all our panelists. We hope this discussion will be enriching and inspiring for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Miguel, and for all our Mexican participants today here in the meeting. If you're not a member of Aspen Mexico yet and you haven't gone to the events, please do so. It's a fantastic program. And you also do a lot on sports right now. So do take the opportunity. And now I'm really happy to also hand over to our Indian colleague, to Richa. Thank you so much for joining us today. Yeah, I'm handing over to you.
Thank you very much, Stormy, and a good evening from New Delhi. My name is Richa, and I work with the Ananta Aspen Center in India. I would like to begin by thanking and congratulating my colleagues at Aspen Institute Germany for bringing this wonderful initiative together and convening us for such an important conversation. In terms of our work at Aspen India, our work is divided into two main pillars of international relations and leadership. This includes track 1.5 and track 2 dialogues with 12 countries and 8 leadership fellowship programs that brings together individuals from diverse backgrounds. Speaking of today, I think at a time when polarization, inequality, and social fragmentation are testing our resilience and the resilience of our communities, cities have emerged as critical spaces for rebuilding the trust and strengthening our social fabric. In this context, cities, I feel, don't only have a unique opportunity, but a greater responsibility to model a more inclusive, accessible, and cohesive future. Once again, we're delighted to be a part of this initiative, which reflects our network's commitment to creating spaces for meaningful dialogue and practical solutions. And I look forward to the discussions today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richa. You should have done the introductory words in the beginning. You did it so much more eloquently than I ever could do. Thank you so much. The Institute, the Aspen Institute in India, in New Delhi, you do a lot of wonderful work also with very young people, right? With high school kids, and you offer leadership seminars and leadership experiences for them, which is really unique and a great lighthouse for us all. So thank you so much for joining us today as well. And you also work a lot on geopolitical issues, but it's a wonderful initiative. So everybody, our Indian participants or those who would like to visit New Delhi, Richa is the person to go to.
Please, pleasure would be ours.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, I'm also handing over to Daniel. The Aspen Institute or initiative, which is currently emerging, is the newest, let's say, baby on the block, so to say. I mean, and it's also the first one on the continent, so it's amazing. Those who don't know us so well, the Aspen family and institute is. It's not the institute in the US which decides there should be an institute in Kenya, in Nairobi, or in New Delhi, or in Berlin. But they do emerge from the bottom up. And it has a lot of ownership from the start on. And so I'm handing over to Daniel because it's quite amazing what you have achieved over the last few years.
Thank you very much, Stormy. And thank you for that wonderful and beautiful welcome. And on behalf of the Aspen Initiative in Nairobi, it's actually a privilege to join my colleagues in welcoming you all to this virtual conference. Thank you very much for being with us. My name is Daniel. As Tommy mentioned, I lead the programs at the initiative, and I'm proud to be one of the co-organizers, and we are proud to be one of the co-organizers of today's conversation. So at the Aspen Initiative in Nairobi, we see ourselves as conveners, consolidators, and communicators. And like many of the Aspen Institutes around the world, our work is about creating those spaces where influential leaders across Kenya, East Africa, and Africa, most catalytic sectors, can come together to reflect, think critically, and have smarter conversations, the kind that really help leadership across the continent become more enlightened, more ethical, and more effective. And like Stormy mentioned at the top, we bring together thought leaders, decision makers, and change agents to address those challenges no single actor can solve alone. And that spirit of gathering across difference to tackle shared challenges is exactly what brings us together today. Social justice and meaningful participation are actually lived realities in all our cities. In how people access opportunity, shape the decisions that affect them, and feel they belong. And while I'm sure Berlin, Mexico City, Nairobi, and New Delhi each carry their own histories, the questions we are wrestling with are strikingly shared. And that's the promise of a gathering like this one, that what one city learns, another can build on. So I'd encourage all of us to listen across borders today with a lot of curiosity and openness. And I'm delighted you're all here, and I look forward to the conversation ahead. So I will join my colleagues from Mexico and India in thanking and congratulating again the Aspen Germany for spearheading this, and for thanking all of you and welcoming you to this conversation. So I'll hand it back to you, Stormy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And what your institute is doing is amazing. You are working, for example, with social media influencers, bringing in like really thought leaders and influencers around the table. You also have a fantastic project on leadership together with the Aspen Institute in the UK. So a lot of things are happening. And all our partner institutes also have newsletters. So if you want to stay on top of what they are doing, sign up to the newsletters and go to the different events. So thank you so much for all three of you for supporting this project and for making it really possible. And with this, we are a little bit behind the time, but I'm very delighted now to jump into our first panel. And for this, I'm delighted to introduce our panelists. So welcome, first of all, from New Delhi, Nikita Mandani. Nikita, it would be fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. You are a journalist, a documentary filmmaker, and a digital strategist. Nikita, why did you decide to participate in a cities project?
I just wanted to see how people made policies, because a lot of the times, right, I'm reporting on these policies. I'm talking to people on the ground who are the recipients of everything that people at policy levels and NGOs are doing. And I really wanted to understand how that is done. And who knows, I might move into that space someday.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us today. Joining us from Nairobi is George Vasonga. And George, do we see you? Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, not just being part in the whole project, but being also here today as one of our speakers. You are the Chief Executive Officer at the Civil Society Urban Development Platform. That's quite a mouthful, I have to say. What does the CSUDP do, George?
Thank you so much, Tommy, and thank you for having me as a panelist in this very exciting conference. It's usually a difficult question because first people say it's too long a name for an organization. So I often tell people just say SUD. So you forget about everything else. But yeah, coming to your question, we work with urban justice systems. And when we talk about urban justice systems, is from a social front, economic front, but also an environmental front. So very often we look at the very underprivileged who occupy the least of spaces in urban areas, some often less than 10%, but they're the majority in those urban areas, 50% plus. So that's our concern, and that's the interest we try to do to bring them back into the justice arena. Thank you, Stormy.
Thank you so much. As you see, Nikita and both Nikita and George were participants in our project and also traveled to Berlin and also worked hard on those policy recommendations. You also saw on the agenda, though, that this isn't just an internal presentation, but we also have external experts and policymakers joining our panel today, which is really fantastic. So from Berlin, I'm delighted to welcome Julian Schwarze. Thank you so much for joining us. And Julian, I did not ask you before, but as a good German tradition, I have to ask you, is first name okay?
It's totally fine.
Fantastic. So Julian is a member of the Berlin House of Representatives with the Bündnis 90 Die Grünen, with the Green Party. So you are our politician here on the panel. And Julian, why are you interested in cities?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. And now I need like 20 minutes to answer it.
You don't
Will
get
not.
20 minutes, though.
But I guess cities are more or less that the places where in the world future is designed and where we have a lot of problems at the same time. And we have to solve the problems in the cities to solve a lot of other problems in the world, I would say.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really good to have a representative of Berlin also with us. And also from Mexico City, I'm really happy to welcome Jeanette de Luna. It's fantastic, Jeanette, that you're with us today. And I do have to say, I'm mispronouncing your first name, probably, that I say it. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining. Jeanette is the coordinator of the Hubs for Economic Development and Well-being Strategy at the Federal Secretariat of Economy. So this is also a pretty mouthful, Janet. So maybe you can also explain to us in a nutshell, what do you do?
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me and representing Mexico's view in this topic. This is the main regional development strategy for this federal government, which really has been an honor to coordinate, because I've been working for many years in cities, in local development, and talking to local officers, and I do believe that that's the scale in which we can deploy policies with the highest impact and with the more meaningful for actual people working and innovating and entrepreneurs to really shape their environment.
Well, thank you so much. And you are living in Mexico City.
Yes, I'm living in Mexico City for many years. I had the honor to work with the mayor of the local district where I was born, where I grew up, where I still live here, Azcapotzalco, a small district in Mexico City.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And Julian lives in Berlin, I would assume. Nikita, you live in New Delhi. And George, you live in Nairobi. So you are both experts of your city, representatives of your city, but also citizens of your city. And so you're bringing in a lot of different perspectives and also a lot of expertise. And I would like to start with the challenges of cities, which cities are currently facing with regard to social justice, accessibility, fairness, and social cohesion. And maybe we can first start by having a look at Mexico City. What would you say, Janet? What are, from your point of view, the biggest challenges your city is currently facing?
Thank you so much. Well, I'm sure we're going to share many of these challenges that we are facing across cities. Mexico City is a very complex city with over 20 million inhabitants in the metro area. But for many decades, we have been coping with these challenges. But what I think that has been rising as the main challenge is housing affordability in the city, and I'm sure that's our one of the most pressing issues across cities for many decades now, maybe 2 decades, but especially the last 10 years, prices have been rising in a pace that cannot be addressed by increases in salary, and this has been affecting especially young population and traditional neighborhoods, communities that have been facing displacement and gentrification and all these phenomena that we are all well aware of. So Mexico City is not the exception. Maybe since the pandemic,
some of these dynamics have been worsening. And it's a real challenge, not only because of the physical access to opportunities, but also, and coming to the topic of this meeting, because of fragmentation of communities and this social cohesion and these identities that start to be questioned by new populations and the influx of new groups that can afford this kind of housing. So yeah, I'm sure we're going to share this. It's been we are seeing, of course, new kind of homes. Like the family integration is different, the dynamic of population is different, the needs for new units, new kind of a more diverse concept of housing we need to look at. But yes, I think it's one of the most pressing issues. We have been addressing it maybe through other solutions such as mobility and now new forms of working and moving around the city, but still like housing and for all inhabitants in cities, like where you live is like the heart of what you have access to.
Mm. Well, thank you so very much. We are going to hear from the others in a second. When we started the project, many people who we talked to were saying, oh, but these are 4 very different cities. And why are you putting them all together in one project? Are there actually the same challenges? We found out, yes, there are. There is a lot of commonality in the challenges, maybe differences in the magnitude and also the past experiences and also maybe the solution, but there are a lot of similarities. So Julian, what you just heard from Janet, does that resonate with you and your experience?
Totally, yes. It's in a lot of things you said, the same situation in Berlin and the same questions. Housing affordability, for example, is one of the biggest challenges and topics here in Berlin, and especially in combination with affordable housing and social housing programs. It's, I guess, one of the 2 or 3 big topics we discuss, combined with the question about climate change and how this affects the development of the city and what you have to deal with to be a place where you can live in a decade or more or even less, we don't know. And the third thing, and you said that before as well, is the question of mobility. And I would say the question about transforming the city from, in the case of Berlin, former car-centrated city planning idea into a city which is designed by the view from the people and from the question how you have the chance to come from A to B safely, for example, by walking, by cycling, good buses and train connections. And all the 3 questions together are, in my opinion, the most important topics we have, not only in Berlin. You said it for your city, and I guess in the other cities, some of them are the same, or maybe all of them. And that's the interesting thing, I guess, that we have totally different places on the world, but the same questions and the same problems to solve. So yeah, it's a yes.
Yeah, well, Julian, thank you so much. And this is also what we heard. Affordability and especially with regard to housing was one of the issues during our study trip. Julian, apart from housing, are there other things which you would say you're really worried about and keep you up at night?
Oh yeah, that's a long list, but in a nutshell, the main thing apart from that is that, and I mentioned it, the transforming question about what we do with this climate change and the cities. And this is, one of the things which are not solved in Berlin at the moment. We have in a few months a election for the Parliament of Berlin, and after that, hopefully, in my opinion, hopefully a new government, which puts this on a focus. And at the moment, we have just the analysis, what will be the result of this climate change for Berlin, but the answer is not given because it's blocked in some way in the discussion. And it's between the political parties, I think, which is an hydraulic question at the moment, and this is a problem because with this we can't solve it. We have to deal this question as one of the biggest at the moment and put it apart from the struggle between parties. And yeah, this is one thing which may often makes me sleepless.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much, Julian. Over to George and Nairobi. What would you say are the biggest challenges currently in your city?
Yeah, thank you so much, Tommy. And I think as Julian and Jeanette have spoken to, they're pretty similar, but one that touches my heart a lot is usually the spatial injustice. And spatial injustice because we have a city where 50+% of the residents are residing in about 5 to 10% of the land area. And once you have that level of congestion, then you're talking about all sorts of dynamics. So whether you talk about housing, you will never find appropriate housing there. You talk about services, you cannot extend services to that kind of concentration. You're talking about energy use. The inappropriateness of it just causes, difficulties in the air circulation. So it's a complex matter, but it's really driven by the fact that we are loading in too many people into the smallest of spaces that we have in the city. So that to me is something that I've followed up very passionately. But secondly, again, the whole issue about the injustices we see in mobility. And you have this large group of people who have to leave those centers to come into the workplaces and use public transport that one is relatively insensitive to children, and therefore children find it difficult to use that same public transport. It's extremely difficult for elderly to use the public transport because you're boarding it on the go, and it's so fast, and it doesn't allow for people who are elderly therefore to also occupy the same. But worse for the people living with challenges, disabilities, and so on. So that whole sense of mobility injustice more or less then creates an exclusion of people who should equally enjoy that same facility. So I see those two as, for me, the more areas where my passion has been driven towards, and also forming reality for us as we live in Nairobi today.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm pretty sure that mobility issues are also a big issue for Mexico City, and also justice in mobility and access to mobility. But Julian, also, I mean, we pride ourselves having a good public transportation system, but it's not always so easy to maneuver for all people. So it's also not a non-challenge for Berlin, I would say. But let's hear first from Nikita. What would you say the biggest challenges for New Delhi?
So many.
So
as we
many.
know. But I think for sure the biggest one that we keep talking about every year is pollution. It gets really, really bad in Delhi for about 4 or 5 months. And I would say that Delhi is the most unlivable city I've ever lived in or I've ever imagined. Like everyone I talk to, right? Because there are not a lot of good days here, right? Like climate change is making the weather even worse. So right now it's heat wave season, right? So then every few months, every quarter, you have a season that you have to somehow fight through to live in this city. So climate change, pollution, and quite interestingly, I often think about what people said about Delhi in 2016, 2017, before pollution became the key topic, and that was women's safety. And no one solved that, right? It's just that pollution became more important to talk about, and then that problem stayed. It's just less talked about. So I just feel that there are so many issues here that need to be tackled. But I guess a really big problem of living in the city or living in this country is that everything is about politics. Everything is about who has power. And then what do people in power prioritize? And a lot of these issues, when you think about pollution, um, people who can afford air purifiers, right? It's already less for them than it is for all the other people who are on the streets and, low income people. If I think about myself and my friends, we all have at least one air purifier, or same with, when you're dealing with the worst heat waves, you'll have at least an air conditioner. But what happens to people who can't afford any of this and who are actually out and about all the time? Uh, so yeah, like that keeps me up at night, I would say. And the weather does too.
And the
Quite
weather does too. How hot is it currently?
So today's been a really good day. I think the last 2 days have been fine, but I guess even just a few days ago, it was 45 degrees Celsius.
Mm.
And yeah, it gets pretty hot, and I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah. And the number of such hot days has increased over the last years and is most likely going to further increase as one of the consequences of climate change. And it comes, Nikita, with all sorts of health problems, right? So the heat together with the pollution.
Yeah, that's why, like, it's not a city that's livable. You can't really expect to live a long life if you live in Delhi. And we hear about, especially because of the pollution, we hear about this so much that little children are getting asthma and lungish diseases, but no one's doing anything about it. Like it becomes, because I'm a journalist, I know every single year we cover pollution for 3 or 4 months nonstop. And it's on the news everywhere. Everyone's talking about it, but nothing's being done about it.
So Nikita mentioned that we do know of a lot of the problems. So the analysis is there. And then it comes down to finding the right solutions which fit to the specific cities, but also it comes down to the policymakers. Julian, so why is it so hard to tackle all the issues which are on the table?
Oh, I would love to have a simple answer to that, because then the solution maybe is also on the table already. I guess one thing is that it's connected to privileges, that a lot of lobbyists, depending on the topic behind it, not to change things, depends a little bit on the topic. And then it is used as a populist argument in the discussion from, let's say the far right especially. And all this together makes it quite complicated. And then sometimes it is used as an argument that if you, for example, do some, I don't know, some reform in this place, then it is against this or that group, so that you don't put it all together. And people or politicians try to say, if we stop the car traffic in this area, then the normal people can't get with car to the workplace and stuff. And with this, it's a mix in a discussion which is used against the change, and I guess it's a mix, but at the end, it's about the question who profits from it in the political discussion. Maybe this makes a little bit sense. And you mean, sorry, you see with my answer, it's hard to answer, because normally when I get this question, I have like the challenge to put all this different perspectives into the answer from a lot of different ongoing discussions. And I guess in our discussion here, we have more or less maybe the same result at the end, but of course different political situations in the cities. And that makes it a little bit hard to answer. But I guess it comes to the 3 points: the which I mentioned, and the first is the privileges of some groups who blocks it, and the other who try to profit from it and to use it for a populist campaign.
No, thank you so much. It was a little bit unfair to pose this question specifically to you. There isn't a silver bullet, obviously, but maybe Janet, you have the silver bullet. No.
No, certainly I don't. but I share, I mean, from my perspective as policymaker, I share the frustration and this, and I talk about this very frequently, like, why is it so hard if there's consensus over certain problems of the city? Why it is so hard? And I don't have the answer, but it's interesting how we may see things changing rapidly in certain contexts in city, but overall cities transform very slowly, and especially like the mindset or how we think about our cities are structural anchors that challenge new ideas. For instance, what Julian mentioned about the car-based city, and when cities start promoting new mobility solutions such as cycling or dedicated lanes or some congestion charges, we have seen backlash in every city because it's not intuitive and it's not how we have thought about our cities for many decades. So it's not easy for politicians to be innovative in certain levels. I'm not justifying. I'm just trying to understand, and also because I mean we acknowledge how bad experience from the past and or poorly implemented policies make it difficult to think about the same good idea that maybe was bad implemented. We're seeing that now here in the city when we talk about public housing policy. We had bad experiences in the past with controlled rental prices, and then we resigned from interfering with the housing market. And now that we are trying to discuss again, how can the state promote affordable solutions, that bad experiences, corruption, non-expected results from past policies are a very clear barrier to start the discussion. And this also means in a city like Mexico and all our cities that are so diverse, there are so many interests and priorities trying to get the attention and the priority from politicians, that it's not easy to define or decide who has the most pressing need, or how can you address one policy area but with a focus on certain groups, and which group has been more neglected over the years. So there are so many levels in which you can think of the problems and prioritize that it's not easy to come to a common understanding. And of course, also this also means that in a city such as Mexico City, it's a very vibrant city and very democratic city, and we have built this democratic culture and the culture of participating over the years. But that also means that there might be very strong interests speaking up, and maybe not at equal levels with some other groups. So I mean, democracy is the beauty and the challenge of democracy, trying to come to a common ground. And then just to point out some like physical or factual barriers, local finance is also a big challenge for our cities. Affordability of how can we make financially sustainable many of these initiatives, these large investments that we need in sustainable infrastructure, in public programs. Cities have been traditionally dependent on federal funds to implement these big projects, and in many cities it's a real barrier that can't be overcome.
Thank you so much. Over to also to a view from Nairobi, and well, pretty much to all of you. What needs to be done to overcome the hurdles? So what we heard is all the challenges cities are facing are first of all very intertwined. So just to focus on one thing isn't going to solve the other, or maybe even make the other thing worse. So it's just very complex. The other thing we have also heard, there are different stakeholders and interests involved. We have also heard that there might also be budget restrictions. It's just also not cheap, and the money needs to also come from somewhere. There are also some special interests. And then there are also path dependencies and also cultural issues. So it's also very sensitive. And it's also very much not fair to just point the finger at our two policymakers here, Julian and Janet, and asking, so why don't you solve that problem? It's just very, very hard to do so. So George and Nikita, what are your ideas? What could you propose to at least make a little bit of a dent into these issues?
Yeah, thank you so much, Stormy. And I really, when I listen to Julian and Janet, a lot of the things resonate. But for me, fundamentally, just before I go to what can be done, I think looking at our Kenyan situation, I keep saying it's a purely ideological issue because we have departed from how politics is designed. For instance, I'll tell you, we have more than 50 registered parties. And if you look at it, you'll ask yourself, so what is the party ideology? What is the ideology that you bring when you elect your leadership? Because a policymaker should be elected on a certain very fundamental ideology. So if you say you're going in there to change for us the context of how we travel in terms of mobility, that becomes a clear ideology. So we first and foremost have skipped that line. So we're not basing our election of policymakers on very clear ideological pathways. So that becomes a departure. But having said that, I think there are two things that I find as potential fixes. One potential fix around the entire policy discourse has to be in the way in which we enable people to engage.
I think we lost George for a second. Unfortunate, right when we were coming to some of
and allow people to. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, we lost you for a second, George, but please continue.
Okay, yeah. So basically, I think the whole element about allowing what was that called? A balanced way in which people are able to bring in their context of real local solutions. And why am I saying this? The existence of how people are building their own resilience, because a lot of things that they're facing, they're finding solutions to them. And these solutions may be so localized that it's not visible quickly. But if given a platform where visibility would be found, you would find that some of the solutions are simple as doing what people are already doing. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel, so to say. But how do we facilitate that to come on board if those attempting it are already excluded from that whole pattern of policy making? So I think for me, that's a fundamental element. Recognize that already, because these things are with people, they're not perishing because they're finding ways to navigate around it. Now, it's those ways we need to capture. And if it's something that works well, build on it and make it work better. If it's something that can actually be amplified, amplify it and make it become a universal solution for some of these elements. I'll stop it at that for the interest of time, Stormy. Thank you so much.
I know that we are a little bit over, but I still want to give Nikita the opportunity to hop in and then also quickly look into our participants, and see if somebody would like to make a comment or ask a question. Over to Nikita.
Thank you. It was just great to hear everyone's perspectives, and there were so many things that everyone was saying that I was just constantly nodding at. So when Jeanette talked about, the fact that Mexico is a democracy and like that's the reality, right? India is so complex, so diverse. And then to bring everyone's interests on the table can be really hard. And there are so many different political parties. And so it does become really complicated. And I was looking at the chat box where Celine said that Delhi can learn from Beijing. And that's a topic that, again, comes back every year during the pollution season because Beijing really was able to tackle the pollution, but that is because it's not a democracy. And in Delhi, those issues are beyond just Delhi. The multiple states are involved. A lot is happening. But in terms of, the solutions themselves, definitely having a way to actively hear citizen concerns. I feel that's where it can get a bit tricky because often just the way I'm seeing, when I'm interacting with politicians and policymakers and when I'm interacting with people on the ground or people in slums or, even my friends and everyone around us, I feel like there is a distance between what politicians think people want versus what people actually want. And that bridge, I feel sometimes that could really help. And the intent to then make changes for the people, not for their own benefit. And that is a very, Delhi problem and a big India problem as well, because if something is not an election issue, it's not paid attention to in the same way. So I guess that becomes really important, that the intent needs to be there to bring policies, to bring changes, to actually make a city more livable for people who can't afford it, right? Like, because this Delhi, and I'm pretty sure most other cities, there is this big divide between rich people and everyone else. And if rich people and people with power and privilege don't struggle with issues, often those issues are not taken as seriously because politicians are not dealing with it on a daily basis themselves.
Yeah. So political participation or access also to decision making is a big part also of social cohesion, and also played a big part in the discussions among the participants of the project. I'm looking at our participants and I don't see any hands coming up. So this isn't your last chance to hop on into the discussion, but for me to be able to call on you and to bring you in, there are two ways to do so. Either you raise your hand so that I can see who wants to be called on, or you write into the chat function what is on your mind. So please do so also for the next panel. We would love to bring you in a little bit more. So this brings us then also to the end of our first panel with also, again, a little bit of an unfair question, which isn't going to be so easy to answer. But if you could choose one policy to implement very quickly, where you have the feeling that that would really have an impact and make and produce some change, what would it be? Nikita, do you want to start?
I have no answers to that. One policy, that's much, right? Let me think. Can we go to someone else?
It's a very hard question, especially given the difficulty of the issues. Who else would like to jump in? Julian, do you want to try?
I try, but yeah, so I mean, I guess we had that before, this question about affordable housing. This is maybe one of the things combined with the question about the climate change. And you can combine it because if you, for example, build new buildings, you have to build them like in a way which is not the old standard way, but in a ecological new transforming way. So yeah, but these two questions are combined because it depends, and this is maybe a kind of an answer.
Is this also on top of your own legislative agenda? Is this what you're currently mostly working on?
It is combined with the question, instead of like destroying buildings and build new ones, to renovate them and to use them again. Yeah, this is the combination. And of course, the mobility question, and now I can add like 50 points, but let's focus on it.
Well, thank you so much. As I said, it's a little bit of an unfair question. Janet, how would you answer?
Well, I'm going to take the mobility that Julian wanted to address also. I mean, as we have discussed, these problems are very interconnected, and you cannot address only one. But also because you said in the short run, I would say like a massive investment in public transport and public in mobility infrastructure that can address like the current city structure, because we also think of new ways in which we would like to plan, and we would like to mix uses and like bring origins and destinies closer. But then mobility has the power to shorten these distances. And if we design the policy, as I think that the city has been done for decades, with a social inclusion perspective, not only thinking about the competitiveness of the productiveness of the city, but how you make it more inclusive and how you bring people closer to opportunities. I think it's one of the policies that has the most potential to have an impact in people's lives.
Thank you so much. And over to George.
Yes, Tommy, I think I'll go. I almost thought Juliana read my mind. Julian read my mind. Affordability of housing. I think housing is the first dignifying level for any human being. If you do not have good shelter, you feel completely out of the city. So I think that to me is key. But it's not just the affordability element, but it also has to be suitability. How does it suit the different cultures, the different orientations that people come into with the city? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, back to Nikita.
I was thinking about that so much, and I feel like instead of talking about one policy, I just want to leave everyone like with this one thing that could get us to more solutions if we find more and more feminist perspectives of designing a city and changing our policies around that. And Sonali can be, she's great at talking about that stuff. But I just feel like a lot of times, because women's voices are not at the front and center of policy decisions and designing cities, we are often losing out on what helps social cohesion and families, and that the more important aspects of daily life, and we focus more and more on the more capitalistic aspects of life. So I just think that could be a really interesting way of thinking about a lot of policies.
Thank you so much. So a change of perspective, and also a change of narrative, so to say. So thank you so much to all four of you. I want to invite all our participants, have a look at Nikita's work, at her films, and also her webpage. Have a look at Julian's policy agenda, what he has passed in the past and where he made a difference to the city of Berlin. Have a look at George's, what did you say? Zooped? How would you put it?
CSUDP.
That is a lot easier for me to pronounce. The Civil Society Urban Development Platform, which is a fantastic initiative for change in the city. And have a look at Jenna's great policy progresses and successes in Mexico City. Thank you so much to all four of you. And this brings us to the next panel. And I promise you, Jonas Vasquez, I'm going to call on you a little bit later on, because my team has been writing me increasingly nervous emails that we are way behind the time and that we shouldn't be moving to the next panel, which I promised to do. But Jonas, we are going to call on you a little later on, because the next panel is just as exciting as the first one. But we are going to change the perspective a little bit. So now we are going to have a look at more of international cooperation, also what cities can do together, what role they play in international diplomacy. So from the inside view of the city and the individual cities, we are moving now to a more international level. And with this, I'm very much welcoming from Mexico City and from one of our participants, Salomon Woltenberg. Salomon, so nice to see you. One of our own, so to say. Thank you so much for joining us. The second person I'm also going to welcome from our project is Diana Botescu. So Diana, also welcome. You are joining us from Berlin. And I'm going to say a couple of introductory words to you also in a second. And from Nairobi, I'm very happy to introduce or to welcome Judith Ovigar. So Judith, we also are looking forward to seeing you. Yes, thank you so much for turning on your camera and for being with us today. And then we also, these three are current participants of our project because it's not yet over. But we are also welcoming two external participants on our panel today. Dean Sharp, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. And also from New Delhi, we have Sonali Vyas joining us. So Sonali, also one of our own. Thank you so much that you are here today, stepping in also for somebody else who was supposed to join, who cannot unfortunately make it last minute. So a short introduction of all of you, and you're going to help me do so. Salomon, you're both an analyst and a politician, and you are also very much involved in diplomacy. So you feel you feel happy and safe also on the international stage, so to say. So Salomon, tell us a little bit of what you do on a daily basis.
On a daily basis, I'm the chairman of the advisory board of Social Democratic National Party here in Mexico. We govern two states, two of the largest states in Mexico, Nuevo León and Jalisco, and we have presence in Congress. We have presence all over the congresses of all the 31 states. Only in one state we don't have presence. We govern 240 municipalities. So my responsibility on the day-to-day basis is all the public policy and ideology of the party, and to follow up in what we participate on the legislative level and at the government level. Also, and I'm very happy because a lot of my colleagues from Movimiento Ciudadano from Mexico City are here. We're also fighting on the political arena, and we have elections on the 2027. So on our daily basis, we also do politics. We're on the streets and we are fighting for a better city.
Thank you so much, Salomon, joining us today. Diana, you are somebody from the government, from the decision-making, the city of Berlin. And so you have both perspectives, the outside perspective and the inside perspective. So what do you do on a daily basis?
So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of this panel. And I was very proud to be a part of the second cohort of the Aspen Fellowship. It's quite complicated to explain what we are doing. I work for the Commissioner's Office for Integration and Migration of the Regional Government of Berlin. This institution has been set up more than 40 years ago in order to design policies and implement them for setting up a support structure for newly arrived migrants or displaced persons, which is a very complex task, especially in today's context. And I am coordinating a team of 12 very talented colleagues that either write or design these policies together with the civil society or coordinate civil society projects that are actually meant to improve the welcoming culture of Berlin. And this is a very complicated and complex issue. You mentioned at the beginning that cities face challenges in the field of integration and migration. We face currently a lot of challenges, I would say. Yeah, so to leave it at this point.
Well, thank you so much, Diana. I'm very, very happy that Dean Sharp is with us today. Dean, you are consultant with the United Nations, the Environment Program in Nairobi, and you work a lot on water responsive urbanism in Africa. But not only that, but you're covering many other issues as well. And you joined us today, and I'm really happy that you did, because this way we also have the direct access to UNEP, which is fantastic. So what do you do on a daily basis, Dean?
Thank you so much, and thank you for the invitation. And to say that I'm both actually an academic and a consultant, and so I'm an urban theorist and urban geographer. So my daily life kind of varies significantly. It can be thinking about the multilateral agenda for the urban on an intellectual level, which is part of why I'm so fascinated and pleased to be part of this discussion, because these are, I think, important multilateral conversations, but not necessarily framed as such. And also at this moment of multilateral crisis, what these alternative forums and how they intersect with the main body of multilateralism is, I think, a very important discussion. But I also think around policy initiatives like water responsive urbanism, water being an absolutely critical issue in many urban contexts, but no less so in Africa, and the kind of ability, again, what you were discussing earlier, to fix the financing to deliver urban water management to African cities is a very urgent task, as we know all too well in Nairobi. And I'll just finally say that I am coming from Maseru, Lesotho, where, again, water challenges are absolutely immense and shaped by bigger cities like Johannesburg, shaping the entire urban and ecological context here in fascinating ways. So think also about how cities interconnect with their hinterlands is also very important.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm pretty sure we come back to that in a second. For some cities, it's too little water, and for some cities, it's too much water. And you have periods where sometimes you have too little and sometimes you have too much water. And cities have to deal with all these different aspects. And we come back to that in your expertise. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We talked about mobility issues earlier on. And one person who is really an expert also on mobility issues is Judith. So I'm very, very happy that you are joining us today as well. You are a smart and electric mobility consultant at UN Habitat and co-founder of Akira Chicks. And it's fantastic, Judith, that you're with us today, as you are wearing so many different hats. What is currently mostly on your agenda?
Thank you so much, Tommy. Well, right now on my agenda, one of the main things I've been looking at is electric mobility in African cities. And also just how we can and how it can affect decision making by digitizing like public transport data. Something else I'm very passionate about is on gender representation within the public sector, basically in different sectors. But now that I mainly work on mobility, looking at how, public transport meets the needs of women, how it can be better designed for women and also with persons with disabilities. And also in informal transport. That's a lot. I've said a lot, but yeah.
So mobility issues are very high on your agenda with all the different aspects and also trying to find solutions to the issues. So thank you so much for joining. And Sonali, you are joining us also from New Delhi today, or where are you currently? You are in Delhi?
Yes, I'm in Delhi.
So Sonali, tell us what you do on a daily basis.
I am an urban planner, urban practitioner working for an organization named Safety Pen. And for those who don't know, safety pin is actually a tool that in India, women use to pin their sari, a garment that is worn over. And just like that tool, we at Safety Pin are also helping people to, especially women and other vulnerable groups, to feed in their lived experience in cities on their mobility issues, on their safety issues, on their accessibility issues, and take that lived experience, translate into data, and share it with the government. So, one part of my day works with, goes into working with young people, women, grassroots organization on the ground, really understanding their challenges, and then taking that data back to the government in the boardrooms, in their municipalities where we work, where we co-design workshops on how do we solve these issues and make our cities safer and accessible and responsive for everyone.
Well, thank you so much. And Sonali brought along some of those safety pins, the pins of your organization, and we all have it here at the Aspen Institute in Berlin. We want to talk about intercity cooperation. We want to talk about multilateral approaches and how cities can cooperate. So, Dean, do you think there is a call on cities to cooperate, or is it just everybody for their own?
Well, I think even if it is everyone for their own, they're soon going to find out how dependent we are on each other. You can see it here in Maseru, where the tariffs in the US, for instance, crippled the factories here. You can see it in Nairobi from the vast production of Chinese goods that get set up of large malls that are shaping the local commerce. Impacts in one city, trade policies in another country have enormous impacts on our cities wherever we live. We are in an interconnected world, and although there's talk about deglobalization, I see no material evidence of it. Financial flows, material flows are still as high as ever, and that has been articulated all too powerfully with the Strait of Hormuz closure. So we are in an interconnected world. But when it comes to multilateralism in cities, we do have a multilateral structure that is still absolutely focused around member states when it comes to the United Nations, for instance. And cities haven't really found their place in that multilateral structure. And I still think it's very up to play. And I think that cities as actors, but also academics, policymakers, can form a more concerted coalition in trying to integrate more coherently within the multilateral structure. And I think for the urban in particular, there's a crisis. I don't use crisis easily. It gets bandied around left, right, and center, particularly at this moment. We even talk about polycrises. But I do think for the urban, there is a very strong case that it isn't properly articulated in the multilateral agenda. Part of it is because cities are not well placed within it. But you look at UN Habitat, just on a budget terms, it's not even 10% of an organization like UNDP. Most of its funding is earmarked rather than core. These are rather technical issues, but it does have profound implications for how the urban agenda is picked up or not, as probably what I'm emphasizing in the multilateral. And I think that in this current crisis, there's also an opportunity to really do something about it. So I hope, groups and people like on this call could be part of this effort, I think, to get a more concerted multilateral agenda for the urban.
So that is really interesting, Dean. Maybe you can explain to us within UNEP and the UN cosmos, so to say. So how are cities actually integrated as decision makers?
With difficulty. I mean, you have city networks that are, outside the multilateral space because member states, you have to be a member state, a country, to really be part of the decision making of UN agencies like UNEP, UNDP, or UN Habitat, which has officially the urban mandate. But then, of course, the urban gets picked up by other agencies, not just UN Habitat, which is a small agency compared to the others. So, you see FAO and the food agencies picking up an urban agenda. You see UNDP, for instance, really working on various urban governance issues in particular. You get World Bank, which is really the large urban funder rather than UN Habitat. So then you get this fragmented issue, and so it doesn't get picked up. There is no coherent urban agenda like there is for instance, food or climate. And climate often, gets filtered. For instance, there's no science policy interface for the urban like there is for climate, like there are many examples for food. So despite the recognition that urban issues drive many of the urgent topics that we're concerned about, climate, technology, gender inequality, economic inequality, as we were talking about earlier, the very air that we breathe, it really gets lost in this multilateral space. And I think that the time is now to really reinvigorate and reassert the importance of the urban for the multilateral space.
That is almost surprising to hear, given the importance of those big cities. And Solomon, I saw you nodding a couple of times. So what Dean said resonates with you?
Yeah, completely. And I mean, what you did, Stormy, what Clara and all the cohort did over the last couple of months was cooperation between cities, between people that are participating in their own cities and that want to learn from best practices from each other, to try to learn from mistakes other cities commit in order to do better. I mean, that is diplomacy, that is cooperation. What the Aspen Institute did over the last couple of months for this cohort was really that. But I don't have any doubt that cities are much better suited to date for confronting the great challenges of the 21st century. I mean, cities are the ones that are in a very complex environment, but also are the ones that are living the most inside the needs of the communities. Second of all, when you see the commonalities between big cities, between urban areas, they are much more alike than between nations sometimes. So thinking about cooperation between cities, learning from cities, and not only on the part of learning, trying to incorporate public policy that was done in other cities, but also working together in specific ways, it is a possibility. Although there is not a worldwide organization, the C40 and others, but I truly believe, Stormy, that there are very good examples. And let me probably cite only 3 examples in which Mexico City has collaborated with other big cities around the world for a specific purpose. One very particular that I run when I was the Secretary of Economic Development was memorandums of economic understanding between cities. That was going much more of the typical sisterhood between cities. That was finding out in which ways 2 cities can do economic activity together, learning from their comparative advantage and working together. And we signed memorandums with Chicago, with Los Angeles, and we start interchanging economic opportunities strongly. Second, it was the COP of Paris with Anne Hidalgo at the leadership of the board. It was the first time of a COP that 500 cities signed the agreement. And I have to say, after a decade, that the cities were the ones that complied more with what they signed, although it was inviting, than at the national level. So 500 cities signing the COP agreement was much more important for the world than even the national level signing at itself. And the last one, just very briefly, is when at the first term of President Trump's his first administration, he started renegotiating the North America Free Trade Agreement. At at the local level, what can you do if those are two nations negotiating a free trade agreement? Well, for the local governments, the agreement is so important that if you go and you work with the governors of the other countries, you can make enough pressure for the national government to act in response of the local interests. And those ways of cooperating are very important in the future diplomacy of the world, and the cities are going to be at the center of it.
Well, thank you so much also for sharing concrete examples. We think a lot about sister cities. Immediately when we talk about intercity cooperation, we think about sister cities. And then we are sometimes frustrated, right? That they do not deliver what they promise. So thank you so much for pointing at memoranda of understanding. Diana, I also saw you nodding a couple of times. Are you satisfied with the current state of intercity international cooperation?
So this is a very philosophical question. I'd say that I am very much aware of the benefits of international cooperation. As Salomon said, through the Aspen program, you actually set the stage for cities which, in my context, would have not cooperated to come together and exchange ideas and formulate recommendations for their governments. But in Berlin, we have the privilege of being a part of the Eurocities, which is the largest network of European cities. And what Eurocities does is that it brings people together from so specialists from European cities to advocate towards the European Commission for the interests of cities. And now we are also formulating recommendations for the next multi-financial framework, which will shape also the funding of integration policies, which is my line of work. And so this is something which works very well, I think, or in some cases not. So a lot of advocacy is needed, but without it, we would not even be here. But also what we do is that we have mutual learning events in different European cities, and we see the policies put in practice, and then we get a lot of inspiration from each other, and can either scale it in and replicate it in our own context, or just use it as a starting point for a new policy here. Yeah. So international cooperation is great, and I strongly recommend to the Berlin administration to place a special focus on that. It's worth diving into that. It's very rewarding. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Diana. Over to Judith. You are also advising multilateral organizations. And also the question to you, do you think we have already reached our goals, or is there more to do?
Reached our goals for multilateral
and intercity cooperation?
Definitely not. There's a lot of room for improvement, a lot of learning that can take place between cities of different, within the continent of Africa, that's where I'm based, and even within different continents. So I'll give an example, like some of the work that we've been doing in UN Habitat on electric mobility. And when you look at electric mobility in many rapidly urbanizing countries, a lot of it is mainly starting with informal transport, two-wheelers, three-wheelers. And there's a lot of lessons learned we can learn within, let's say, Kenya, Tanzania, but we also had a lot of exchanges with countries in Latin America and also in Asia on how they were planning different technologies. So there's still a lot of room for learning across different countries, across different cities. And as long as we are living in different cities and we are having different challenges. The world is evolving. There are new challenges happening. There's a lot of challenges on climate resilience. Because of all that, there is still more for us to learn. Also, to just give another example, looking at a lot of developing countries, I think on developing cities, they provide a lot of lessons on how to, plan and implement strategies in resource-tight environments, how they are incorporating innovation, how they are dealing with stakeholders, how these strategies are community-led. So there is a lot that we can learn across different cities, across different regions.
Well, thank you very much. And Sonali, what's your point of view?
Actually want to give an example of what could city to city cooperation could look like, because I happen to work on a project where we got to work with city officials across Nairobi, New Delhi, as well as Bogota. And one of the things that is that was very interesting, and like we always say, is we were trying to adapt safety audit methodology in these three different cities. The technology is same, but the contexts were different. But when all these three city officials came together, they were able to understand how to use this technology, how to adapt this technology or a methodology to their context. While Bogota focused on improving bike lanes because they wanted to get into improving cycle tracks. Nairobi focused on lower income neighborhoods, and Delhi focused on city-wide lighting. Now this tells us that why it is more and more important to cities to come together. And one of the key differences that I see, while living in Delhi, while different, even the cities in this cohort, Mexico City, Nairobi, and Berlin, all of these cities give a lot of power to elected officials at city level. While in the biggest challenge that we have is the power to govern, to take most of the decisions when it comes to public infrastructure and public services lies with bureaucracy or the state government. It does not lie with the electors. And on June 1st, we actually celebrated 33 years of 74th Amendment, which was the amendment, a policy that came in to give more powers to local government, but we are still far. This is something that I really wish that India and Indian cities could learn from all the other cities, because I have seen many, many good examples when mayors, when elected officials at city are able to take that decisions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing this. We are almost running out of time, but I think we can go over for a few minutes because I also would like to hear from all of us, from all of you, what's the way forward. So we all know that multilateral organizations are struggling in a changing geopolitical environment. There's also the G20 happening, also with the Cities 20. So there are still those organizations around, but it's not an easy world for them. It's also not an easy world for cities, and also intercity cooperation is also not cheap, and stakeholders might ask, so why will you do it? So Dean, I wanted to ask you and start with you. What's your recommendation to city officials moving forward, keeping in mind that city officials also have a lot on their plate and need to prioritize? So what would be your advice to cities officials where to put their focus?
Of course, it's contextually based, but as a broad focus in terms of where to put your chips, if you like, is the multilateral space needs clearer avenues for engagement. So that can be built from the city offices themselves. It's to be careful of duplication, like really to assess what has already been done, where and how having the key people to be able to communicate and synthesize that information is absolutely critical. There's a lot of goodwill and capacity that is often not utilized just because the connections aren't made, which is why such platforms like this are so important. So it's getting, like anything, ensuring good team management, the right people in the right places, and ensuring you're getting the right information flows to the people that matter.
Well, thank you so much, and for also coining us where to put your chips. And I want to ask that to you, Diana, as well. You already said something with regard to Berlin, but to broaden the question a little bit more, what would you also advise your colleagues in the other cities?
So I will answer the question more concretely because I have some topics that we are currently tackling and where I guess we need a lot of inspiration and capacity building. So Germany relies heavily on migration. And Berlin as well to maintain its economic stability and to manage its shrinking workforce. And for that, we strongly need welcoming cultures to rethink and reshape our welcoming culture, and we need to set up very modern welcoming structures and because in the arrival phase there is a high risk of I would say poverty and inequality even in Berlin, and this is something that our projects report to us on a daily basis. And so that would be something that I would prioritize, and also place the focus on the opportunities that we have in terms of digitalization, the use of artificial intelligence, and bring that together with improving the situation of vulnerable groups. I think policy making is also very siloed. We think very separately about vulnerable groups. We don't bring that together with digitalization, with the use of artificial intelligence, with its topic of setting up welcoming structures. So I would say we need a lot of innovation in this field, and therefore we can rely on the expertise of other cities that have already piloted good policies.
Well, thank you so much. Over to Salomon.
Thank you very much, and thank you again for the opportunity. It was great, and we made a lot of friends. So it was fantastic. Now, only for that, it was fantastic. But let me take it. Let me put it very straightforward. In 2030, I'm gonna be the governor of Mexico City, and when I do that, at least we need to understand that the cities are the future of the world. I mean, in the next couple of decades, 2/3 of the population, we are going to live in cities. So cities have to have a more important role, not only at the local level, but what we do at the international stage. And for that, we need to lobby and to do the politics at the national level in order to have the role of the cities established at the Constitution and at the law. Because again, today cities do not have any specific diplomatic role on the foreign affairs and foreign relations things that have to do with a nation. And it has been that because it's the tradition and it's whatever. We have to modernize our laws and understand the role of the cities. Second of all, we need to work city to city. I mean, again, There are a lot of things that we have in common between Nueva Delhi, Nairobi, Berlin, and Mexico City. But there are a lot of cities with the ones that we can find the same problems. And if we work together for the same problems, we gonna have a better opportunity to find solutions that we can reproduce. And third and lastly, we really need to have a multi-city organization worldwide. Hopefully, it would be the UN that hosts a new cities organization that have a representation, that have a voice, and that had a voting. But if mayors, if we come together and if we do the fighting together, I truly believe that the leadership of mayors is going to be, as Benjamin Barber wrote a decade ago, if mayors would rule the world, things would be much easier and much better, much equal and much just. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Solomon. I mean, this opens up a whole new discussion. Yeah, it's food for thought, I have to say. Over to Sonali and then Judith.
In fact, this wonderful group also came together to discuss some of the recommendation, and I quite really like that recommendation, and I would like to cite it here that these cities should go to a common funder, and the funder should do a program, and because we should stop, like all of you have mentioned, we have to stop looking at programs and cities in silos. There are problems that need regional intervention, that need intervention where cities could learn from each other. And we have enough multilateral, enough organizations that have stakes in these countries. Why not put them together? Why not take them together? Because, there is unity in groups. And when there are cities who are willing to invest in, and the cities are actually, dying to get that challenge, get that in focus. And if we build a program which could bring this, maybe an alliance of cities which can go for focusing on a certain problem, and I think it can do wonders. And just we discussed in some of our conversations also. So I am very hopeful that hopefully one of us and all of us can just collectively put together this recommendation, and yeah, it gets a reality.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Judith.
Yes, I'm just going to repeat a couple of words people have said. I do believe cities should focus and policymakers should focus on connectivity at different levels. One, when you look at connectivity for the people within the cities and between the cities, so looking at aspects of transport and also digitization, how that enables access to opportunities, access to services, access to affordable housing. So you can look at, we can look at connectivity on that level. Then secondly, looking at connectivity on a multilateral level, where now cities talk to each other, learn from each other, learn from experiences, and adapt from the lessons from the different cities. I think that's very important. And then within the cities, just to emphasize what Solomon has mentioned, working with cities to define exactly what the role of the cities are. Because what we see is a lot of times cities, they have challenges with regard to formal authority and also financing to actually address these challenges that they are working on. And that they can do by working together. So for me, it's really about connectivity, which is also what the Aspen Institute, this cohort was about, connecting across different cities and just realizing that we have similar challenges in different contexts.
Well, thank you so much. And unfortunately, we are at the end also of our second panel and also of the conference. Thank you so much to all four panelists with sharing their insights and also their ambition, Salomon. And this was fantastic. And I hope that you will be able to pick up the connections and put some of the ideas which were put forward by the cohort into action. I just want to invite all the participants of our project to put on their cameras. Then we will get you onto the stage, onto the virtual stage. And it really warms my heart to see all of you. And I'm not going to call on every single one of you, but it's really fantastic. And thank you so much for putting in so much effort. And I very, very much hope that all of us can see each other again. We from the Aspen Institute, again, want to thank our international Aspen partners for this great cooperation. And I hope that we are going to continue the city connection and that the international Aspen family is growing. So thank you so much again. And I also really have to underline, without the support of the city of Berlin and also the Stiftung Deutsche Klassenlotterie Berlin, all of this wouldn't have been possible. So intercity connectivity, intercity learning, intercity exchanges, we all value them so much, but they do cost money. And for civil society, on our own, we would never be able to put this onto the road. So a big thank you specifically also to Mr. Grassmann from the Stiftung Deutsche Klassenlotterie for also guiding us in this project, and to the people from the city of Berlin who were also very close partners in action, so to say, and many of you met them when you were in Berlin. So especially to Thomas Honeck, the Deputy Director, International Affairs Division, Georg Klussmann, the Chief of the Protocol of the State of Berlin, and also a very, very big thank you for her guidance, Frau Claudia Farbukatas from the International Affairs Division. And they not just funded us, but they also put a lot of their heart, their expertise, and also their time into the project. Thank you so much to all our participants, to our audience today. And, you know, we want to see some action now. So we did not all, our participants didn't put all that effort and time and sweat into those policy recommendations just to have another piece of paper which you're going to bury in your already big stacks of paper on your desk. We want to see some action, and we are ready to put this into action in Mexico City, in Delhi, in Nairobi, in Berlin, and all four of us together. So a big thank you and a big good night, good rest of the day, or a good morning, and hope to see all of you again. And a big thank you to Clara and her team for making all of this also organizationally possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you.